Welcome to the apex of sports ownership, the Apex Athletic Collective.
Welcome in, everyone, to episode 73 of Instigate Success, Building an ABA Franchise. I am your host, as always, Jakeymuffins, here for tonight's episode. Let's get things started. Hopefully it's not lagging too much. I know it seems like it's lagging a little bit on my end. But let's go over some Instigators news. We are now past the halfway point in the season, or I guess we're right at that halfway point of the season. So season 2, what we're looking at here, first game we just played in 2025. Let's jump into it. So some of these from last week, but yeah, so we played our first game in 2025. That was last weekend. We played against the Nashville Aces, and that was one of our home games. We'll pull up that schedule here. One of our home games here in January. We have one other home game, which is tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. Best Choice Fieldhouse in Fishers, Indiana. We'll be playing against the Midwest Monsters, new ABA team. They are in their first season, their inaugural season, and we look forward to playing them tomorrow night. And you'll see on the schedule there, we were supposed to have our first double header, but we will. I think we're just playing that game tomorrow on Saturday. At least what I've heard from around the league is it sounds like that game is not going to happen. I'm not sure if the Blaze are going to be sticking around further. So that is what we've got going on with the game on Sunday. So I don't anticipate us having that game. It looks like that is no longer on the schedule for us. And then our other game in a couple of weeks against the Blaze as well. It does not look like we'll be playing that game either. But if they put anything out officially, like from the team or whatever, we'll definitely share that and pass that along. But that is at least what we've been told at this point. So passing that along to all of our viewers here. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight, whether you're catching us live here on Patreon or you're catching us later on over on YouTube or wherever. So thank you for watching this, every Friday night here, 9 p.m. Eastern. But I figure we start things off with that just to give a heads up for this weekend's games. So if you're over on the Patreon and you catch all our games live on there, it probably will just be that first game, that Midwest Monsters game, which is going to be tomorrow night, 7:30 tip. And then the game on Sunday will not be streaming because it's not going to be happening. And I'm in Florida, so I don't know how the weather is up there, but I know I've heard up north they've been getting, and even not too far up north, they've been getting, snow. So definitely am familiar with snow. I just have not, encountered it here down in Florida. So hopefully the conditions are, not too bad for tomorrow's game. I think last I checked the weather, it looks like the snow was supposed to be stopping pretty soon here, if it hasn't already stopped up in Fishers in the surrounding area. Yeah, it looks like maybe another hour or so it should be wrapped up as far as the snow goes. But I know across the country, at least it seems, it's been kind of a cold front. So I'm sure it's definitely going to be colder there than it is here in Florida. But we've even been hitting freezing temperatures down here as well. But that is what we got coming up for this weekend. So this was supposed to be our first double header game or double header weekend. We do still have one, I believe, on the schedule here. Yeah, if we look at towards the end of the schedule there, the end of February, February 21st and 22nd, we still do have a game scheduled for both Saturday and Sunday. That's something we've been trying to get done for this season compared to last season. We've mentioned that when we were in the play-in games last season in our first ABA season, the play-ins and the playoffs, they have games on back-to-back days. You've got games Saturdays and Sundays, so that's what we were trying to prepare for going into this second season, was to have that on the schedule. So we should still have that at least one time before we jump into the postseason, and hopefully that'll give us a little bit more practice on that end. But you see there, so we got that game tomorrow at home, and then we'll be on the road for the rest of January. Again, that the two Michigan Blaze games are not going to happen, at least at this time. So it may just be the rematch against the defending champion Chicago Fury is our only other game currently slated for this month. But I'm sure we're going to try to see if we can get some fill-in games there as well. But let's jump back to this past week's game. So this past week's game, the Hoosier State Instigators were going into the game just off of a, let me see, where are we? Just off of a loss against the Columbus Wizards. And that loss put us below 500 for the first time in this season. Keep in mind, though, last season, the Instigators were never at the 500 or above mark. So for us to be above that mark for pretty much the whole first half of the season, right before the first half of the season wrapped up, to fall below that, it's definitely an improvement. And we hope to continue to improve that each season. But we were following last week's game, a very close game, a good comeback from the Hoosier State Instigators. That game was, I believe, 25 points down in the third, and then the Instigators came back and they lost that by a single possession at the end of the game. So really good turnaround and not giving up and sticking with it for the whole entire game. But that put us at the 4-5 mark on the season. So like I said, the first time under 500. So we've been at 500 a few times throughout the season, and then also been above 500 a few times as well. So we'll jump over to that. Just as a reminder, as we go through the list here, had that first game against the Pros with a win as well against the Indiana Legends. That got us to our highest ranking. We were power ranking number 16 in the ABA. Then we went back on at the home with the 3-game stretch, and we fell for the first 2 games there against the Wizards and the Kings, with a win on the back end of that home stretch against the Pit Bulls. Then we had a loss on the road against the Pit Bulls, win against the Legends, loss against the Fury, and then that's where we're coming up to here is a loss against the Wizards. And then this past week, we faced off against the Nashville Aces. Nashville Aces, a very hot team this season. Going into this matchup, only 1 loss on the season. I believe they're 8-1 going into the matchup, and they were ranked in the top 10. They were number 9 on the power rankings. We've played teams in the power rankings, but we have yet to defeat any teams up in that top 10 ranking. So this is definitely going to be a test when it comes to it. And if you caught the game live or you've seen the recaps that we put up, You probably already seen this, but that's the game tomorrow. But we had a 2-point victory against the Nashville Aces, and that game went into overtime, which we'll debrief here because of how the overtime period played out. Um, so we had the 2-point victory there in the overtime period, but the ABA rules, and we mentioned this on the broadcast as well. So, I made that ABA rules video package that we air before all of our game streams that we've been putting out this season, which I do have to update because there are some updated rules. I know the foul rule has changed. Now you can foul out, I believe, after 7 fouls. I believe it used to just be after the 6th foul, so 7th on, it was a technical, or it was a yeah, I believe a technical foul or something along the lines of that. So I believe you could play a little bit longer. Now it's after 7. You do foul out. I'm sure there's some other smaller changes as well, but I know that's one of the bigger ones. And one of the things that has remained the same is that overtime rules. So overtime in the ABA is different than the traditional overtime in, say the NBA, where you continuously go into overtime periods until you get a winner. Even college is set up like that. I know I've seen, yeah, I'm a Syracuse fan, so I've seen Syracuse games go into like 6 overtimes, and so. But ABA is different. It is the 3-10 and out rule. That's the easiest way to remember it. It goes by that. So 3 would be a 3-minute period. So after the 4 quarters, if you are tied, it jumps into overtime. That overtime is a 3-minute period. If you are still tied after that 3-minute period, then it goes to the first to 10 points from that point. So like an elam ending, um, you know, whatever the score is, just kind of resets. There's no timer, per se in the game. There's still a shot clock, but no specific time left on the game clock. It's just next to 10 points wins. And that makes it so that the games, while the games do get higher scoring already in the ABA, you don't have the games extending too long, as far as time goes. So that is what the official rule is for the game and for ABA games when it comes to overtime periods. So we and the refs on site weren't completely fluent with that overtime verbiage, and we went with what the refs did. But I know if that happens again, especially if I'm at the game, that's something I will bring up to make sure we get that right in the future. What we did this time, and what the refs did, was we did overtime periods at 4 minutes of length, I believe. So I think we played a 4-minute overtime period, still tied after that. Then we played another 4-minute overtime period, still tied after that. And then we did the 10 points, first to 10 points. And we won off of 2 walk-off Rico Spikes free throws, and only fitting. We'll jump over to the box score here. Rico definitely had himself a day and a great game. But just some clarification when it comes to that. I do try to be, try to make sure we can get that so that it's common knowledge as far as with the refs and everybody on site, even if myself or someone else isn't on site for the games. But got that covered, and I think we've got it so that we know for the next time that is the way the thing works when it comes to overtime. And this is only our second ever overtime game. We had the overtime game against the Louisville Pros last season. And I'll be honest, I don't think we were super familiar with the rule at that point in that game either. So we had that 3-minute overtime period, and I don't think we quite knew that was that how the overtime worked either. But I think we now we've got 2 overtime games under our belt. We should have that figured out, I hope, at this point, so that way the next time we come across that, we are on top of it. Um, but that is for this past week's game. And let's jump over to the box score. And like I said, so because of the overtime situation, this the quarters on the box score are going to look a little weird, but we'll jump over there here. So we are over on the box score for the game. So that does put the Aces down to 8-2, our first win against a top 10 ranked team. Hopefully the first of many, because we do play a good number of ranked teams, and we've got the Chicago Fury, the #1 team, coming up here not too long. So hopefully we can continue that streak, but that puts us back to the 500 mark at 5-5. And this is going to be the halfway point in the season because we did have 20 games scheduled. Like I said, because of those upcoming games against the Blaze, that may wind up taking 2 games off of the schedule. Not sure as far as how that works with the record, so it may wind up being a little bit off, but we're at least on the point where we scheduled in the season, that we are at the halfway point. So at the 500 mark, hopefully we can at least keep that up, if not improve and get our first winning season. That's definitely something we all want to do. But you see there, the box score, like I said, is going to be a little bit off because of that, how we had the overtime periods. So first 3 will be correct, and then that fourth quarter is going to have all those other ones combined right in there. We can see here, starting lineup, a couple of new guys here. Cash Bell, one of our newer players. I think this is his second game with the Hoosier State Instigators. He's been rocking the Frosty jersey. He got the start, as well as Tyler Bibbs, another one of the newer players for your Hoosier State Instigators. Don't know if that's accurate. I don't believe LB started. I think that's actually supposed to be JoJo that wound up starting. Um, and then Malcolm and Dame also with the start. Um, but as far as the points go, you can see a few guys here over 20 points. Leading scorer Malcolm Martin, he had some pretty big 3-point shots, tied with the most 3-pointers in the game, 4 of 5, and also across the board, overall good shooting day, 4 of 5 for threes, and then 9 of 13 for twos, and 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals. And overall solid. We've seen that Malcolm, across this season, one of our best defenders as well. Rico, like I mentioned, he had a great game coming off of the bench here. 28 points. I believe that's got to be his season high to this point. And 3 of 3 on his 3-point shots. And you see there, free throws. Like I said, he hit those crucial free throws at the end of the game to win the game. 5 of 6 from the free throw line, and he also added 12 rebounds, so a double-double for him in this game, as well as 5 rebounds, or 5 assists. I'm sorry, 5 assists on the game. Coming off the bench, really great, a really strong showing by Rico Spikes. And I think that's something that we look forward to seeing more from Rico here throughout the season. So we've seen him be a court general. Um, on on the Instigators, not only in this game, but throughout the season and in the games that he's played here with the Instigators in the summer games too. Um, then we've got LB, one of our young guys, who's been electric on the court, is 25 points, 10 rebounds, a double double for him as well, 4 assists and a steal. And then Dame, who's been very solid as well, 21 points, 7 assists, leading the team. And then we got guys like JoJo. JoJo shot real well. He was solid from 3-point arc, 100% from the field, 4 of 4, 4 assists, 3 rebounds. Um, and other guys I'd like to point out are newer guys on the team. Cassius with 10 points. Cash, he's been pretty solid, and he kind of helped us kind of break that, um, or helped lead some of that scoring earlier in the game. Where in this game we were putting a bunch of threes up to start, and then we eventually started driving down and going into the basket, trying to get some points that way. And then we also got Tyler Bibbs. We've seen him become one of our big men throughout the season here. With 11 rebounds, second most on the team for the game. Rico wound up leading the team. Some things to note, though, we did have a few players out in this game, and we'll have to see. I think I just got the lineup sent over to me not too long ago for tomorrow's game. But we did have a couple of guys who were out due to injuries and illness and whatnot. All the fun things here in early January, cold weather, New Year's, all that type of stuff. So I know one of our key guys that we've seen since the inaugural season is Chuck Bloom. He's been a solid piece on the team the whole entire time we've had the Hoosier State Instigators. He was out, and I believe he's going to be out. Maybe not. Maybe he'll be back tomorrow. We'll have to see. But I know he was out last week with a rib injury he sustained from the week prior. So I'll have to see if he's there tomorrow. But I know he was out for this past game. And Joe, I believe, was also out. He was out for illness. Those are two ones that I know off the top of my head. As far as guys that we were missing in this game. But we'll jump back on here and take a look at some of the other games here around the league from this past week. So from this past week, we saw, our game here, the 148, 146. And then a couple of teams, this is filtered out for our division here. So that Central Region Black Division, Windy City Inferno with a large victory, 122-77 over the Greyhounds. And then the Southland Saints with another win, a 10-point victory against the Charlotte Rebels in a pretty low-scoring game for ABA standards, an 83-73 victory against an in-town rival, I guess you could say. I believe Southland is up in Chicago area. But that is the Southland Saints is a team that we're going to have to keep an eye on here as we go throughout the season when it comes to the standings in our division. They are currently number 2, but we see this week's matchups. We got again, this is filtered for our division. The Windy City Inferno will go on the road against the Rebels. The Lions, not in our division, but they do face off against several teams in our division. Will go against the Wisconsin Frost. Southland Saints, again, a team we're keeping an eye on as far as the division rankings go, taking on the Chicago Knights. The Fury taking on the Shuckers. And I think that's a game, even though, the Shuckers haven't had the greatest season to date so far in their inaugural season. I think that's going to be a good game for them, as far as, even if it is for a learning experience. It's cool for them to be able to match up in their first season against the defending champions. And then we'll be facing off against the Midwest Monsters in that matchup tomorrow as well. And we'll take a look at the Monster season so far. And I think they are still looking for their first win on the season. Um, but we can go through their season and see kind of how they ranked against similar opponents that we faced. So we see their first game was against the Southland Saints. And first game in an inaugural season, we know how that goes, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get that first win, and once you get that first win, then things start kicking off a little bit better. But it does take some time to get some wins under your belt. Then another loss on the road, or a loss at home against the Chicago Fury. 73 points in both of those first two matchups for them. You see they improved in that third matchup, though, against the Lions with a closer game. Still a pretty decisive victory, though, for the Lions. So the Monsters 85, Lions 132. And this is I remember this now, one of the weirdest scores I've ever seen in the ABA. I feel like I've got to click on this just to see if it looks like they did. Okay, they did break down each of the quarters there, because I was wondering how they achieved that score total. But 84-33, with less than 10 points in each quarter, it does seem, and they did fill out the stats there. So no, it looks like that's pretty legitimate. That was an 84-33 matchup, with the Rebels over the Monsters. Then they played the Rebels again in a much closer matchup there, 80-106. Coming here in the last few games, so they've been a much closer games, less than 10 points in that one. Decided a win for the Inferno. And then the past two games against the Wisconsin Frost, the Monsters have been in a higher side of scoring. Still losses, but getting closer, it does seem. And looks like they may not have wound up playing out these games here. And I do see the forfeit there in favor of the Saints in that last matchup. But we do look forward to playing the Monsters tomorrow night, against them at our home venue, the Best Choice Fieldhouse in Fishers, Indiana. And it's an inaugural season for them. They've got they've still got a lot of games left here, but they're going to be looking for that first win, and definitely going to come into this matchup trying to show the league what they're capable of. So let's jump back to actually we could take a look at this too. And it doesn't break it down. So if you use this, if anybody else uses this site, so My Stats Online, it's also the same as like if you go to the ABA site and you use their stats. It's pretty much the same type of stats that you'll see. But it doesn't break it down by points per game. It just does overall for all of these on here. Yeah, so it just does all of them on here, but we can see at least some guys to keep an eye on for tomorrow. The leading scorers on the team looks like it's going to be number 24, Frederick Harris Jr., as well as number 4, Devontae Gibson. So it looks like those are their two highest scoring players. And let's see, rebounding wise, it looks like um, Frederick Harris Jr. is also the leading rebounder. The second leading rebounder would be Vernell Bracey, number 20. And yeah, across the board, it does look like he's going to be their best player. So number 24 is definitely a guy to keep an eye on. To keep an eye on tomorrow, and that matchup is going to be Frederick Harris Jr. So that is going to be the player to watch. Then we'll take a look at the standings here. I know we're halfway through the season, but we might as well take a look at standings and see how things are shaping off for the playoffs for your Hoosier State Instigators as well as teams around the league that we have interest in. So here is your division standings here for the Central Division, Central Region Black Division. Chicago Fury still on top, undefeated on the season, still to this point with a very large point differential, and the number one team in the power rankings. I don't see them falling from that any point or anytime soon. Unless they wind up falling to us in the matchup we've got coming up here in a couple of weeks. So hopefully that's the case. Always that's what we want. But solid team, and they're the defending champs for a reason. And they're going to be holding that up for sure throughout the season here. Then we've got the Southland Saints at number 2, 7-2 on the season, and I believe these are going to be the games that are reported to this point, as far as I know. Might be off as far as some of these. Just thinking off the top of my head, and I'll pull up the ABA power rankings too, just to see. But that puts them at number 2. They're pretty solidly in that number 2 spot right now. And then we've got the third spot is Windy City Inferno at 5-4, which they are a half game above us right now. And we look at the split here on the home and away record for them. They're very good at home, but they have struggled on the road. Very similar point differential. Just keep that in mind. If we finish the season with the same record, that is the tiebreaker. It is the point differential. And I don't think we have the Windy City Inferno on our schedule for this season. So it's definitely going to be going down to the point differential tiebreaker if it comes to that point. A game, or I guess a half game behind us at 4-5 is the Wisconsin Frost. They are 4-5, so just one game under 500, but they do have a minus 89 point differential. Again, that's going to be important as far as tiebreakers go with these final spots here. And then the Midwest Monsters still looking for their first win on the season. We don't have 100% official word, but I know last season it was the top 3 were locked into the playoffs, and then the rest of the teams wound up facing off against each other in the play-in games to decide that final roster or the final playoff spot for each division. So I'm thinking and anticipating that's what it's going to be, is the same thing this season. So that's why we're really shooting to be in the top 3 at the end of the season in the division. That way we can lock ourselves into the playoffs. We were in the play-ins last year, and we won that first play-in game. And shout out to Jason. I see you over here in the chat. I know we've got to get the Windy City on the schedule. Definitely something in the future. we've got a good schedule this season with the 20 games we have. That was one of our things we wanted to do, was have a full schedule, which is 20 games. Um, but obviously now these games against the Michigan Blaze, I'm not sure how that's going to impact the schedule. I know sometimes they count as forfeit, but I believe that may only be if it was a home game for us. If I remember the technicalities on that correctly, so we may get one of the two games at least in our favor for that. Um, but yeah, we look at this division here. There's actually a couple of teams we don't play in this division, or I guess a few teams we don't play in the division. So we don't face off against the Southland Saints this year. We played them last season. We were able to beat them, I believe, in both of the games we matched up against the Southland Saints last season. We do not play them this season. The Inferno we don't play against, as well as the Wisconsin Frost. So we did get changed into that new division from the red division to the black division this season. So that has a part of it, because locality wise it is teams we're familiar with, and the travel we're more familiar with when it comes to the teams in the red division, which we'll take a look at the red division too. Since we're familiar with that division, I think this will just show all of the rankings here. Yeah, so we'll take a look at that. So the blue division as well, we play against the Columbus Wizards. Again, it has to do with the travel arrangements, is again one of the closer uh, teams to travel to, and travel to us. Columbus Wizards leading their division at 4-2. They are leading the series against us on the season 2-0. I think that's actually all the games we have scheduled against them too. Michigan Blaze, like I said, that is a team we were supposed to play, but I don't believe we're going to be playing them, as the future of that team is in the air. But the blue division there, I mean, if they drop out, you look at this. I mean, they've only got a few teams there in that division to play out the season. So the Wizards, I think, are going to be competing with the Steel City Yellow Jackets, and it'll pretty much be up to those two teams unless another team emerges here late in the season. But the red division, that's again, a lot of our games here are going to be against the teams in the red division, which was our original division in our first season. Indiana Lions leading the way at 15-3. They've got a lot of games under their belt already. At 18 games played, they've already hit the minimum required games for playoff eligibility, and that record right there is going to pretty much solidly lock them into the top three of that division and lock them into the playoffs. Number two, we got the Nashville Aces. That's a team we just defeated, giving them their second loss on the season. Um, that puts them at number two in the division. 3 games behind, though, because of how many games the Lions have played over them. 8 more games with 7 more wins. Then we got the Ohio Kings, who we faced off against a couple of times so far. And we played them last season as well. Kings still undefeated against us to this point. So we still got some games against them as well. Hopefully, we'll be able to get our first win against the Kings here in the future this season. And Kings led by dominant scorer Cameron Mitchell. Louisville Pros, we've faced off against this year, and we've been able to defeat them in our home opener. They are 2-4 on the season. Maysville Miners, another new team in the season, new ABA team this season, is 2-5 after a hot start. They knocked off the Indiana Lions early in the season, and it seems that they've fallen since then. The Indiana Legends at 3-8 on the season so far, improved roster from last season, and we can see that with their record too, improving on that. And then the last division in the Central region is the White Division, 402 Elite at 7-2, pretty solidly ahead in that division at number one. Um, and then we see St. Louis Spirits at 500, the Chicago Rebels at 4-7, River City Gamblers and Minnesota Capitals. I know we play. We don't. I don't think we play any of these teams, but I know teams in our division do play um, a few of these teams, especially the Chicago Rebels, with a lot of the Chicago area teams being in our division. And I think the River City Gamblers also play some of the teams in our division. And then we'll scroll through here through the East and just point out some of these key teams here. So in the East Black Division, New York Hoop Dragons still on the top, undefeated on the season, only 6 games on the record to this point. Jersey Express at 7-2, also a very solid team with both of their teams with very large point differentials in their favor. In the Blue Division, we've got the Springfield 413 Elite at 8-1. Technically leading because of how many games they played over the Massachusetts Wolves, who are undefeated at 3-0. And then we've also got the New Hampshire Kings at 6-4. All of those teams above the 500 mark. Interesting though, they're 6-4 with a -11 point differential. We'll jump to the Red Division, Central PA Kings, team local to where I'm from, at 9-2, having a very good season, leading their division. But they do have top heavy. You see that top half of the division is all solid. Richmond Ram Chargers at 7-1, as well as the Philly Thunder 7-2, all within 1 game of each other, and all over 100 points in that point differential. Then in the White Division, we've got some heavy hitters here. Buffalo Extreme, that's always a team I keep my eye on. One of the players on that team, Howard Washington, he was on the Syracuse basketball team when I attended Syracuse. That's why I always keep an eye on that team. So I know they definitely got talent on their roster. And they are a team I definitely think this season we will be seeing in further runs in the playoffs. The team that did knock them off last season, though, is the Binghamton Bulldogs. When it came to that East Division, or the East White Division championship, the Bulldogs actually wound up walking home with the victory at 7-0 on the season. Both teams are still undefeated. And then the Saratoga Racers still at 7-3, as well as the Originals. They're also with a winning record on the season. Take a look here at the South region. We see a team here that represented the Final Four, the Mississippi Silverbacks. They're going to be fighting for a playoff spot this year at 6-6. Leading their division, though, is the Gulf Coast Gladiators at 9-1. Right behind them, the North Alabama War Dogs, and then with winning records, we also have the Crusaders and Knights. But that's a pretty big division there. You got 9 teams there. Then we jump to the Blue Division. Austin Bats is a very solid team. There you can see there with that point differential, 11-0 on the season, as well as the All-Stars and Red Storm, both with winning records, a couple of games behind the Bats. Red Division in the South, again, a very, very loaded division as far as number of teams. And you can see there are a lot of good teams too. It looks like the Columbus Skyhawks at 10-0 leading the division there. Then we got the Atlanta Aliens. The Aliens are one of the teams that have been consistently among the top teams in power rankings throughout the past few years in the ABA at 10-1. The Pythons also at 10-1. Then we've got Chattanooga Strike also above 500, as well as I feel like that's got to be a typo. Oh, okay. So it is the Georgia Grizzlies with a W. So that is just had to double check that. Um, then down in my area, we've got some of these teams in the white division. The Kissimmee Lambs at the top at 8-1, and County Royals at 7-2, and Rattlers 6-2. Then over in the West, we've got Empire Hounds leading their division. In the black division, not too far behind them is the Guy Levy Legends. Then some of these conferences or some of these divisions are much smaller. You can see over on the west side, Tucson Buckets leading their division. Silicon Valley Panthers, another one of those top teams that we will likely see in a deep playoff run at 11-0 with a very large point differential. And then leading the white division is San Francisco City Cats. So that covers where things are standing within the league. And let's jump over to the power rankings. So this is over on the ABA site. We've got the power rankings right over here. So we've got the power rankings from January 5th, which would be this past week. Chicago Fury, like I said, still at the top there, 11-0. Buffalo Extreme, another team I always keep my eye on. And then it's going to be, pretty much all the undefeated teams there at the top. Lions, a team that we've faced off against a few times. We will not be facing them this year, as far as we know. At number 9 at 14-2, and I don't understand how the record didn't get reflected there. But the Aces fall to number 11, or tied for number 11, which is interesting when you think about it, because if they're tied for 11, then that should drop these ones down technically. Like this would be 13, and then if they're tied, then that would be 13, 14. This would be 15, and so on and so forth. But that's how the power rankings work in the ABA, is they have ties and it keeps the same numbers. But the Aces are actually 8-2 on the season with that loss, the loss against us from last weekend's game. And interesting. But yeah, so I think that should get reflected here hopefully next week. Like I said, local to where I grew up, the Central PA Kings. And then we look through here, see some of the other teams we've got in our division. We've got the Southland Saints at number 19, still with only 2 losses on the season. And then the Windy City Inferno, wrapping up the top 25 there, at number 25 with a 7-4 record. And actually, that makes me think. Yeah, so like I said, that might not be 100% accurate over on the other side. I think we had 2 less games on the stats page reflected for the Inferno as well as the Fury. So 2 additional wins for both of those teams compared to the stats page we looked at. But that's where things stand at the halfway point in the season for the Instigators. We've got this game coming up tomorrow night, 7:30 p.m. tip-off at Best Choice Fieldhouse, and we'll be playing the Midwest Monsters. I'll have to confirm how they spell the name. I think we may have had some typos when it comes to team names. On the schedule here. So I'll have to see if it's Monsters with an A or Monsters with an E. I thought it was like Monsters, like the Monstars, but maybe it's Monsters with a Z. And then I think Miners we also spelled incorrectly too, as just a little Easter egg for those looking for the little mix-ups that we have throughout the season here. But that's what we've got coming up tomorrow. I'll be flying out in the morning, so I'm really looking forward to this game. I'll be there at Best Choice Fieldhouse, and I know there's probably some snow on the ground up there. So as long as it's safe to travel and you are in the area, we definitely hope to see you tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. for that game. Again, we this will be our last home game of this month, and then we'll be back at home at the beginning of next month. So if you're local to the area, this is a good chance to catch the Instigators in action. Um, you can get your tickets online ahead of time if you do want to, and you can also get ticket packages. So I think we can still give you that 3-game ticket package. We still got 3 home games left, so you can do that as well to help save some money. But we're really looking forward to that. I always love being there. It's a great atmosphere, great venue, and everyone's got the front row seats. I know that I've seen some. If you watch the streams, I've been pretty good at staying off the camera. I've noticed. So I normally stay off on the side, but we'll see. Maybe I'll make a brief cameo appearance at some point. But we'll have that game live on Patreon tomorrow night as well for all of our loyal Patreon subscribers. And like I said, that game that's supposed to be on Sunday, that's not going to be going. So if you're looking for that, you didn't miss it. It's not on the schedule as of right now. And the other game I don't believe is going to happen either against the Blaze. Um, Funny you ask that. So the Halloween movie I literally today I forgot to upload the graphic, um, but they just released. I'm sure I can pull it up actually really quick. They just released their official poster for the movie. So it has not been released yet. They are still working on it. A lot of these like smaller movies, they work on these they work on them, and sometimes it takes a lot longer than anticipated. Let me see. I can pull this picture up. No, it's not letting me pull it up like that. Let me see if I can. I could do that. Yeah. Okay. So I could just show you my my Gmail here, and it'll have the rest of it blurred out, I do believe. So we'll take a look over there real quick. All right. So yep. So that is their movie poster. They sent that over to us today. All of us involved with that movie. So Haunted House of Pancakes. Anticipating, hopefully, by next month they should have it pretty much wrapped up. But pretty cool poster they came out with. They had some great minds involved with that were behind a lot of the um, good movie posters from horror movies recently. And here, I'll stop sharing that. And yeah, let me see. I can pull up the other info I got on it. Um, so it is from Creepy Duck Design. They are the designers behind that. They did the posters for the recent Scream movies, Smile 2, Terrifier 2 and 3, as well as the latest Alien movie. So that's just some of the movies they've been involved with for the posters. So definitely got a really nice poster for that movie. But definitely keep you guys updated on that when it does come out. I'm hoping, I'm pretty much just a background like extra in the movie, but I'm hoping that you can at least see me close up enough that you can pick up that the shirt I was wearing had the Instigators logos on it. So that's what I'm hoping for, at least when it comes to that final cut. And wherever they wind up distributing it, I will definitely pass that along as well. But that was a fun experience. Now we've got once that releases, we'll have two people involved with the Instigators involved in movies. Obviously, AB last season was in Lady Ballers and got coined the nickname Hollywood AB because of that. But that should be out here hopefully within at some point later this year. But I think that's going to do it all for tonight's episode. Thank you, as always, for joining us here Friday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, for Instigate Success. Just one last reminder: tomorrow night, 7:30 p.m., Midwest Monsters will be taking them on as we look to go back above 500 as we jump into the second half of the season. I'll be there. Hope to see you there. If you're not, catch it live on Patreon. But until next time, as always, be great and instigate.